In this tutorial, we're going to be creating this Stylized Super Hero Sculpt in Blender. Now there are a couple resources online that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using this Canon Hdri, and this is on Hdri Haven. So I'm just going to be using the 1K version. You don't have to use this if you don't want to, but I just like to use Hdris because it helps to get more realistic lighting. So links in the description if you'd like to download this. And then also for the logo on the superhero's head, I'm going to be using this star image right here. You can use whatever image you want. This is on Pixabay, and you can see Pixabay license, free for commercial use, no attribution required. So I can use this image for my artwork, and I don't have to worry about copyright or anything like that. So links in the description if you'd like to download this image right here, or you can go on Pixabay and you can like search for logos or stars or vector graphics. You can also click right here and you can click on illustrations or vector graphics. Or if you want to create your own logo, you could do that, whatever you want to do. Just one important thing with your image, make sure it has a transparent background. As you can see in my image, it has a transparent background behind the star. I'm just going to download this as the biggest format as a PNG, and I'll just download that. Now just a couple more things I wanted to go over before we start the video. If you'd like to help support me and also get the project files for this tutorial as well as my other tutorials, then you can do that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. The link is in the video description. Also, before we start, I wanted to talk about drawing tablets. So we are going to be doing sculpting in this tutorial, and I think it's very important that you use a drawing tablet for the sculpting if you're able to. Now if you don't have a drawing tablet or you're not able to get one, then you can use a mouse and follow along with the tutorial, but sculpting with a mouse is a lot harder and it's hard to get a good result. So you can follow along with the tutorial if you don't have a drawing tablet, but you may not get as good of a result. If you're interested in purchasing a drawing tablet, I'm going to have Amazon links in the video description to some tablets that I recommend, and they are Amazon affiliate links. As an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases, so if you purchase something through the links, it will help me out, but it won't cost you anything extra. And I'm going to be using a display drawing tablet, and those are really cool, but those are definitely more expensive. So if you can't afford a display tablet, even if you can just get one of those smaller pad tablets, those work really well, and those are going to be way better than using a mouse. And then one last thing before we start the video, I wanted to thank this video's sponsor, Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a 3D model site where you can preview 3D models in your browser. You can even view them on a phone, tablet, or in AR and VR. They also have a huge 3D model store where you can purchase models and assets. You can even apply to sell your own models on the platform. Check out Sketchfab with the links in the description. Alright, let's get started with the tutorial. Now, as we're doing the tutorial, if you want to see what buttons I'm pressing, my screencast keys are right down here in the corner and you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I'm just going to select everything with A and then just press X and delete. I'm now going to press Shift A, and when I'm sculpting a face, I really like to use an icosphere. I just really like those. You could also just add a UV sphere, but using a circular object works pretty well. So I'm going to add the icosphere. Now, before you move the icosphere or anything, you can see right behind me there's the Add Icosphere Settings. I'm just going to hit this, and then there is the subdivisions. Now, I'm going to turn this up pretty high to something like a 7. Just make sure you don't turn it up too high because this is going to add a lot of geometry. So if you turn it up super high, it'll probably crash Blender. Just something like a 5 or a 6 or a 7 should be fine. I'm just going to zoom in here. So if I tab into edit mode, you can see this is what it's done. It's added a lot of geometry, but it's very smooth and it's really great for sculpting. So I'm now going to hop over to the sculpting layout, which is right here. And you can see it pretty much has everything already set up. Now there's just a few things that I want to do to set up the layout before we actually start. So this right over here, this side panel, everything that I'm going to need for sculpting is up here. So I'm just going to close this so that I have more room. So I'm just going to click right here when the crosshair appears, click and then drag up and then let go. And then the same thing right here. So just click, drag over and let go, because I have all the options that I need for sculpting right up here. Now, if you click right over here to the matte cap, just click on the matte cap. You can use whatever matte cap you like. I like to use this one. This one's pretty cool. Also, I have a video on how to create your own matte caps. I'll leave a link in the video description because you probably aren't going to see all these matte caps. That's because I've added in my own, and I've also created my own matte cap. So I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to learn how to create your own matte caps. Alright, now click right up here on brush, and I'm going to turn on accumulate and front faces only. I like to turn these settings on when we're sculpting. They just help to sculpt better. Now when I just click and drag, you can see there's no symmetry, and we are going to be sculpting a face, and for the most part a face is symmetrical. So to turn that on, I'm just going to click right here on this X, and now you can see that this little dot appears, and if I sculpt, you can see that it's symmetrizing that sculpt. I'm just going to press Ctrl Z though to undo that. And then as we're sculpting, I like to use the Dyn Topo Workflow. So I'm going to turn that on by just clicking right here and then clicking on OK. And what this will do is this will add geometry as we sculpt. Now, I like to leave these settings how they are, but the detail size, I like to turn this up to something like a 3. Now, as you're sculpting, if that's kind of laggy because it's adding detail as you sculpt, you could turn this up. If you turn it up to a bigger amount and then you sculpt, you can see how much geometry it's adding. But then if you turn this way down to like a 3, you can see it's a lot higher detail. So just turn it up to whatever you like. If it's too laggy, then you're going to need to turn up the number. Alright, so now I'm just going to bring this over to my drawing tablet and we'll get started. Alright, so I've hopped over to my drawing tablet and we can now get started with the sculpting. If you can pull up reference images, that is going to be really helpful. So if you want to pull up some reference images of maybe like some stylized characters, something that you have in mind, kind of something that you want to sculpt, or even pulling up some reference images of like some facial anatomy, that can be really helpful. I have some reference images on a second monitor, and reference images are just super important. So if you can grab some reference images, that would be really helpful. But I will also be putting some reference images in the video to kind of help you out as we go. Alright, so I'm just going to zoom out here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is press G, and that's going to go to the grab brush, and then I'll also press F to make my brush bigger. What I want to do is I want to push the sides down a little bit, because the human head isn't super round. It is round, but then on the sides, it's actually kind of flat. So I'm going to go to the side here, and I'm just going to start to tap. I'm going to kind of zoom out here. And I'm zooming out a bit so that I can just see the sculpt better. So I'm just going to kind of tap on the sides and just kind of push that in. You can see now on the side here, it's a little bit more flat. And if I press 1 to go to front view, you can see that's now a lot more flat, and that's really good. All right, now I also want to pull the chin down. So I'm just going to tap down here and just kind of slightly just pull the chin down. If I press 3, I can go to side view and just kind of see how that's going. So this is the front of the face, and then here's the back. And then here's the chin. So I'm just going to pull that down. Now, if you want to make your superhero look very strong and bold, if you make a really big chin, that can really help. So I might make like a little bit bigger of a chin, and we are stylizing this, so adding a nice big chin can kind of make him look really buff and strong. Now, right down here, this is where the neck is going to be, but I just want to kind of pull this up a little bit so that we can see the chin a little bit better. So I'm just going to pull that up, and that way we can kind of see that shape a little bit better. All right, and then let's just push this in slightly. And then if I press 3 on the number pad for side view, here's the back of the head, and it's a little bit too far out right now. So again, with the grab brush, I'm just going to tap and just kind of pull this in slightly. All right, so I'm going to go to the clay strips brush, and I'll press F and make my brush a little bit bigger. And remember, I have the Dyn Topo on. So I'm going to start by just carving in the eye sockets. I'm going to put the eye sockets about in the middle of the head, or maybe just slightly higher. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and just start to sculpt, and we're just going to sculpt in the eye socket. So these are where the eyes are going to be placed. We're not sculpting the eyelids yet. We're just sculpting the eye socket. So just going in there, kind of going on the side here, pushing that back a little bit, and then also going down and pushing that back a little bit. That's pretty good. Let's press Control S to save our project. And I'm just going to save this project as tutorial.blend in a folder on my computer. And then as we're sculpting, you can press Control S and that'll save your project. All right, so let's keep going here. Now, right on the side of the head, kind of where the cheek is, I'm going to have that come in just a little bit. So I'm just going to hold in the Control key, just kind of flatten that out. Okay, flatten that all out. And then right here, this is where the cheekbone is going to be. So I want to pop the cheekbone out just slightly. So I'm just going to go around here, kind of go around the form, and just slightly pop out that cheekbone. All right, that's pretty good. Now on the side of the face, I want to flatten that down just a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and just go along here and kind of add that ridge there, kind of flatten that out. And then where the eyebrows are, that's going to pop out a little bit. So if I just go right here, I'm just going to go along here and just go along that form and just pop that out just slightly. All right, and then right here where the nose is, the nose kind of goes back in a little bit before coming out. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, just kind of push that in a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to just bring the nose out. So I'm just going to go along here, adding in that form, just overlapping that form. And we can see the nose is just starting to pop out. And then I'm going to kind of make a triangle shape. So if I just kind of zoom in here, you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically making a little triangle right there. I'm just going to keep popping that out. Look at it from different angles to see how it is. Just kind of bring out the front of it a little bit. So the wings of the nose are going to be on the two sides. So I'm just going to go around here and just pop out the wings of the nose a little bit. All right, and then if we go down to the bottom of the nose, I want to flatten that. I almost want to make it like it's a flat plane. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and just go in there and just flatten out that so that that is a flat plane. So it's starting to look like a face. I'm going to press G to go back to the grab brush, and we can just kind of play around with some of the proportions because some of the proportions are a little off. So the first thing that I see is looking at the front of the face, it looks like it's a little bit too wide. So I'm just going to zoom way out. You could also make your brush bigger by pressing F. And I'm just going to tap and just kind of push the face in because it just looks a little bit too wide. And especially right down here, I'm going to push in the jaw and make it a little more thin. All right, let's go to side view. You can press 3 on the numpad. So I'm just going to tap and just kind of pop that out right there. All right, maybe just bring the ridge down a little bit on the top of the eyes. Now this plane right here, I want to make that a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to pop up the nose slightly. Just kind of pull the nose out a little bit and then just push this back in slightly. Now the mouth actually comes out just slightly and it curves around the face. So what I want to do is I want to go to the clay strips brush again, and then I'm just going to go along here and just pop out where the mouth would be. It's almost like you're making just a very, very slight muzzle sort of. You're just kind of popping that out because the mouth actually does come out and then it curves around the face. It's very, very round. And then we kind of want to make, right before the chin, we want to make it go in. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and just kind of go in there. And then I want to make the chin pop out a little bit. So I'm going to just go along that form and just pop out the chin. All right. And then let's also work on forming that jaw a little bit better. So I'm going to start out kind of right up here, and I'm going to start by going down and then over to the side, because this is kind of where the jaw is. So over, down, and over to the side, and that's just going to meet up right here. Okay. And then let's go to the grab brush, and I'm just going to shape this a bit more. So I'm going to pop this down a little bit. And if I kind of look like on the bottom view, you can see this is very, very flat, and I kind of want to make it curve more. So I'm just going to kind of tap with the grab brush and kind of curve that. And that way it's just curving a little bit more. All right, that's better. And then I also want to bring this down. Just bring that jaw down a little bit. Always look at your sculpt from different angles, because if you sculpt from just one angle for a long time, then you might get the shapes wrong a bit. So looking at the sculpt from lots of different angles as you sculpt can help you to get the shapes right. I can see right here the nose, it looks like it needs to come up a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of tap, just pop the nose up a little bit. I'm going to go back to the clay strips brush and then just add a little more skin here. And then I need to start smoothing this out because as you can see, it's very rough. So how I smooth it out is I just hold down the Shift key and then just go along here and just smooth that out. Now I want to make sure that I don't smooth out all those forms that I've made, but just these rough parts right here, I'm just going to smooth that out. I don't just want to go along and smooth the whole thing because that's going to we're going to start to lose those forms that we've made. So I'm just going to go along the forms and just lightly smooth that out. All right, so just kind of smoothing that out. Smoothing this out here, and then going down here, smoothing that out a little bit, going along that cheekbone. All right, let's go down more to the mouth, just kind of smooth that out a little bit, and the nose, smoothing that all out. All right, so this is going to help us to just kind of see the sculpt a little bit better, see how things are going. So I'm going to press Control S again to save our project, and I want to work on the nose a little bit more. The nose, it's quite flat, it's not very round. I really want to define that shape. So with the clay strips brush, I'm just going to start to go along that form, really pop out that nose. And then I kind of want to make an angle right here, or a plane. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, and on the side of the nose, I'm just really going to push that in just a little bit and just really define that shape. All right, and then hold down the Shift key, just kind of smooth that out. Go along there, along the form of the nose, and just kind of pop that out. Just see how that's looking. Look around from lots of different angles. All right, I'm gonna do kind of the bottom of the nose. So what I wanna do to make the nostrils is first, I'm just gonna go along here and add a form right there, and then go along here. All right, so just kind of popping that out and then going along here, going down. And you can see I'm kind of making the wings of the nose just by adding clay around it. And then right here, I can hold down the control key and just start to go in, just start to carve in the nostril. If you want to go to this draw brush, that might work a bit better. So the draw brush works pretty good for going deep in. So I'm just going to go back in there and then just hold down the shift key and smooth that out. So just making those little nostrils there. Now this is pretty flat and the middle of the nose kind of comes down a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the grab brush with G, and then I'm just going to kind of tap and just pull this middle part just down a little bit. Again, look from all different angles, kind of see how it's going. I'm going to go back to the clay strips brush and just add a little bit more clay here. Just kind of define those shapes. I'm just going to go around the front of the nose and then kind of go around here. Add in more clay around there and here as well. Just kind of going along that nostril and adding more clay around it. Okay, and then we'll just smooth that out by holding down the shift key. Smoothing that all out. Let's press Ctrl S again to save our project. Now the wings of the nose right here, I really want to sharpen up the sides of the wings of the nose. So I'm going to click right over here to the crease brush. And then I can just start to crease in here and really define that shape. So I'm creasing in the wings of the nose and then holding down the shift key and just lightly smoothing that out. All right, going along there and then just smoothing that out. Now I think I want to make this right here just pop slightly. So using the crease brush, I'm going to hold down the control key and just go along here, and that'll just kind of pop out that shape just a little bit, and then I can smooth that out. So we're just kind of doing that right there, but not that strong. So I'm just going to lightly go along here and just pop out that shape a little bit, and then holding down shift key, just smoothing that out. All right, let's see how this is looking, kind of look around. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the clay strips. Now I want to add that little crease right there. You can see it especially when people smile. You can see that little crease right in there. So it starts at the sides of the wings of the nose and it goes down around the mouth. So I'm gonna go to the clay strips brush and I'm just gonna start by just going down and adding that in. So going from the top of the wing of the nose all the way down here and just going around where the mouth is. All right, so now that I've kind of added in that, I just want to kind of bring out that form. So I'm just going to go along the side of it and just add a little bit of clay just going in there. And then I can hold down the shift key and just smooth that out. But we still have this form right here. So I want to make this go in a little bit to kind of deepen that. So I'm going to hold down the control key, and on the other side of it, I'm just going to start to go in a little bit. Just kind of bring that back. Just push in that clay a little bit, and then holding down the shift key, I'll just smooth that out. And then I think I'll also hold down the control key and just kind of go along there, push that in, and then smooth it out. All right, and then to make it even deeper, we can go to the crease brush and then just start to crease that in. So just creasing that form right there, smoothing it out just a little bit. Maybe smoothing out this, because this is kind of bumping out a lot. So I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. And then just creasing in that form there. Now I think it's probably a good time now to start adding the mouth. So using the crease brush, I'm just going to start by adding a crease here. And we're just going to start by creasing in where the mouth is. So I'm just going to add some creases right there. And I'm going to have it slightly coming up. And then we'll have it slightly going down. So there's just a slight form there. It's not perfectly straight. Just comes a little bit up and then comes a little bit down. All right, and we're going to go all the way over here, adding in that crease. And then right on the very end of it, I'm just going to add a little bit of a crease there on the side of the mouth. Just creasing that in a little bit, okay, and then let's zoom out, kind of look around. All right, now as I said, the mouth curves around the face, and the face is very round. So to really make that happen, I'm going to go to the grab brush again by pressing G, and then I can just kind of tap and kind of push this around the mouth. Just kind of push the mouth around the face. And also you can look at it from the top view or the bottom view just to kind of see how that's curving around the mouth. I think I might pull the mouth up just a little bit as well. And I do want him to be smiling a bit, so I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. And then the front here, the front of the mouth, if I go to side view and kind of tap and just kind of pop that out a little bit. All right, I want to work a little bit more on the chin, so I'm going to go back to the clay strips, and I'm just going to go along the kind of the bottom and just add more clay there, really defining that shape there for the chin and then just smoothing that out. And then right here, I want to cut this back because I really want to be able to see those forms of the face. We are going to be adding the neck right here, but I just want to cut that in so that I can really see that jawline. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and just push that way back. Just kind of flatten out the bottom of the face or the bottom of the head, kind of where the neck is going to come out. Just for the time being, I don't really want to worry about that. There we go. So you can really see now that form right there. And then also right down here, I just want to carve in a little bit kind of underneath the chin. So I'm just going to hold down the Control key, just carve that in. All right. And then holding down the Shift key, just smooth that all out because we don't want it to be super rough. Just kind of look around it. So I want to really pop this out even more. So I'm just going to add more clay, just really pop that out. And you could also go to the grab brush and kind of tap and just kind of push it down. All right, that's pretty good. So I think I want to work more on the eyes because the eyes are really helpful to kind of see how the sculpt is going. So I'm going to go to the clay strips and I want to just push this in even deeper. So I'll just hold down the Control key, just really carve that in, and then hold down the Shift key and smooth that out. And then I'll just work a little bit here around the eye before we add those eyes. So we're actually going to add in separate objects for the eyes. So we'll do that in a moment. I just want to kind of define these shapes a little bit better. So I'm going to go along that cheekbone again and then just smooth that out. And then right here on the side of the eye, I just want to hold in the Control key and just go in a little bit and then smooth that all out. All right, let's press Control S again to save our project. Now I'm going to go back to the layout and that's going to bring us back into object mode and I'm going to add the eyes. So I'm going to press Shift C to make sure the 3D cursor is in the center of our view. And then I'll press Shift A. I'm going to go to Mesh and I'm going to add a UV sphere. Now I'm not going to move the UV sphere. I'm just going to tab into edit mode. And then I can press G to grab, S to scale. And we're just going to put it inside the eye. So G to grab, S to scale. And then I want to rotate it over so that its top part is facing out. So I'll press R to rotate, and I need to click on the X button so that it rotates it on the X axis, and then I want to rotate it over by 90 degrees. So I'm going to type in 90 and then enter. So there we go. Now you can see it's been rotated over by 90 degrees. And then if I go to side view, I can just kind of zoom in here, press G to grab. We're just going to push that in. I don't want it to be coming out like this. I really want it to be back deep inside there, something like that. Maybe just scale it down a little bit. I think it's a little bit too big. All right, let's see how that's looking, and we can adjust this later if we need to. I think I want the eyes to be just a little bit smaller. All right, that's looking good for now. So I want to mirror that over. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifiers, and then I'll click on add modifier, and I'm going to add the mirror modifier. And you can see it just mirrors it over on the X. Now, for some reason, it isn't doing that. The mirror object, you can click on this and then select the icosphere or the head object, and then that should mirror it over on the X-axis. All right, and then I'm also going to shade this object smooth, so we'll shade that. Let's go to 3 for side view, just kind of look at this again. I think I'll tab into edit mode and just pull this out slightly. That's pretty good. We can adjust this later if we need to, but that looks pretty good for now. So I'm just going to select the face object and then go back to the sculpting layout, and that's going to bring us back into the sculpting mode. Now the Dyn Topo got turned off again, so I'm just going to click on this and then click on OK, and now it's turned back on. All right, so I want to add the eyelids going around the eyes. So I'm going to go to the clay strips, and I'm just going to start by doing the top one. So I'm just going to zoom in here, and then I'm just going to go around in circles. So just doing the top, just going around in circles, going inside the eye, and just waiting for that to pop through, because it'll pop through the eye eventually. All right, that's fine. We will use the grab brush later and just kind of change the shape of it. So just go along there. It can be really thick. We will make it smaller later. Just going along there. All right, and then let's do the same thing for the bottom. So I'm just going to move down so that we're looking kind of down on the eye, and then do the same thing. So we're just making these half circles, just going back and forth, just popping that out, and just going through and just adding more clay until it pops through the eye. All right, let's see how that's looking. I want to make that come up a little bit more, so I'm just going to keep on going, just adding more and more clay. All right, that's pretty good. So the shape is pretty messed up, but we will fix that. So what I'm going to do now is go to the grab brush, and I'll just play around with the shape a little bit. So on the side here, I want it to be going a bit more forward. So I'm just going to kind of tap here and just pop that forward a little bit. And then right here, I'm just going to tap and just push that back in a little bit. All right. And then let me just tap on the top here and just kind of push that out if anything needs to be pushed out or pushed in. So if I zoom in here, you can kind of see this is very, very thin, and then this is a bit more thick. So I'm just going to kind of tap, make that kind of more even so that the amount right here is kind of all the same. If I go to the top here, I kind of need to push this in a little bit as well. Now, something to note is that the bottom eyelids are usually a bit more flat and the top eyelids usually are a bit more round. So I want to take these two sides and push them down a little bit. So just tapping, pushing them down a little bit, and then the bottom eyelid, we're just going to tap and push that up. Now, the eyelids are still very round. They curve around the face, but I mean just like if you're looking at the face from the front, the bottom eyelid does look more flat. But it's still very round and it curves around the eyeball. There we go, that's better. So you can see this is more round, whereas that's more flat. All right, just take a look at this, look around. I think I want his eyes to just be open a little bit more, so I'm just gonna kind of tap and pull that open. All right, that's pretty good. So now let's go to the clay strips brush, and I'm gonna start by just smoothing this out because it's really rough. So I'm just holding down the shift key and going along the forms. I don't want to smooth it out to an extreme amount. Like I don't want to smooth that out because I really like that lip there. So I'm just going to smooth out like in between those angles. So I don't want to smooth that out or that out. Just going to smooth in between there. All right. And then right here, now this bottom part, I am going to smooth this out a little bit, but I don't want to get rid of all the forms we just created. So I'm just lightly smoothing that out. And then these are still kind of thick. So I'm just going to hold down the control key, just kind of go along there and then hold in the shift key and smooth that out. The eyelids are definitely tricky, so they just take a lot of practice to get good at, but I'm just going to hold down the control key and just go in there and just kind of push that in and then hold in the shift key and smooth that out. Now I want to add that kind of like that lip there, and I want to make that even more strong. So I'm just going to hold down the control key, just go in there and really push that down, almost like there's like a cliff edge right there. So just going along there, pushing that down. And then I'm going to go to the crease brush, and instead of it creasing in, I want it to be creasing it out. So I'm going to hold down the control key as I crease, and you can see what it's doing. It's just pulling that together and just popping that crease out. All right. Holding down the shift key, just smoothing that out. Just popping that out there, okay. All right, and then I want to do that for the top one as well. So I'm just going to hold down the control key, just pop that ridge out, go all the way around the form. All right, and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out just a little bit. I don't want to smooth out that crease too much, but I just want to smooth out all around it. Take a look at this, kind of zoom out. I'm going to press Control S again to save our project. All right, so I want to play around with the shapes even more. So I'm going to go to the grab brush and just kind of play around with this. So this is a little bit too thick. So I'm just going to tap, push it in. All right, just tap in there. Try to make that very even right here. It kind of goes up a little bit right here. So I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. All right, now I think I want to move the eyes over just a little bit and also make them a tiny bit smaller. So I'll go back to the layout and I'm just going to select the eyes, tab into edit mode, and I'll press G to grab, move them out just a little bit, and then S to scale, we'll scale them down just a little bit. So I'm going to select the face now, and then go back into sculpting, and using the grab brush, I'm just going to tap, kind of bring that out a little bit. All right, and then just kind of match the eyelids to the eye. All right, now on the sides of the eye, I just want to crease those a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the crease brush, and just crease that a little bit more. All right, and then just smooth that out a little bit. And then for the other side here, I just want to crease that in a little bit as well. All right, so let's work on this ridge here above the eye. So I'm going to go to the clay strips, and I just want to pop this out even more. Just popping that out just a little bit. And then I'm going to add clay in here, and I want to make kind of a face right here. So I'm going to go in there, and then I'm going to go to the crease brush and just really crease that back and in. And then with the clay strips brush, I want to go along here and just kind of add in another form there and then smooth that out. Also hold down the control key and go in and then smooth that out as well. All right, take a look at this. Let's take a break from the eyes for a little while and let's work more on the bottom of the face. So I'm going to add in that little indent that is above the mouth but below the nose. So using the clay strips, I'm going to zoom in here, hold down the control key, just go back and forth, kind of around in a circle, and then just hold down the shift key and smooth that out. You could even add in a little bit of clay just to pop that out and then just smooth that out. That might be just a little bit too big, so you could just push it in a little bit. And then let's add the lips. So I'm going to go to the clay strips and I'm just going to start out by going around here, just kind of going up and down, just popping that up and then going down. And as it goes farther out away from the face, it's going to get smaller and smaller. Getting smaller and smaller. I'm going to zoom in so I can make it smaller. And then kind of right here, it's going to be bigger. There we go. And then the bottom here, let's pretty much do the same thing. So right here, this is where the lip is going to be the biggest. So I'm going to go around in circles. Not really in circles, but just go up and down. Kind of go along that form. And then we'll go in and make it smaller and smaller. And then once it's coming out here, pretty close to the edge, it's just going to get really tiny. All right, and then I'm going to hold down the control key. Just kind of push that back right there so that we can make that pop. And then you could just go along the side of the lips and just add a little bit more clay to kind of make that pop. And then just holding down the shift key, smoothing that out. Let's go to the crease brush again, and I'm just going to crease in the mouth there. Just creasing that in, kind of deepening that. Press Ctrl S again to save your project. And then kind of on the top and the bottom of the lips, I want to make those pop. So I'm going to hold down the control key and that'll make the crease brush come out. And I can just really pop those forms there. And then hold down the shift key and smooth that out just a little bit. And then I'm not going to hold down the control key so that it'll just go in a little bit right there. And then we'll just smooth that out a little bit. And then let's work on the top lip. So I'm going to go to the crease brush, hold down the control key, really pop that out, and then go back in there, just popping out that top of the lip there. And then we'll also go back in here and just kind of push that back. And then smoothing that out a little bit. All right, now this little form right in here, I want to go to the grab brush and just push it in because it's a little bit coming out too far. So I'm just going to push that in a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to the clay strips brush and just add a little bit more clay here, just kind of going along the lips and then smoothing that out because I don't want there to be a super strong crease there. All right, and then you can see right here, this crease, it's a little bit lumpy. So I'm going to go to the grab brush and just kind of make that, try to make that crease there as smooth and straight as possible. Let's work on the nose a little bit more. I want to go to the crease brush and I'm going to hold down the control key and just kind of pop out that ridge right there. I already did it a little bit, but I just wanted to show you what I did. So I'm just holding down the control key and just popping that out and then smoothing it out if it's a little bit too strong. And then right here, creasing that in so that I have clear forms. All right, look around, let's see how that's going. Press Ctrl S again to save your project. Let's go ahead and do the chin a little bit. I want to add a dimple in the chin. So using the crease brush, I can just crease in there and then smooth that out if it's a little bit too strong. All right, so I think this is looking pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the neck now, and we might come back to this a little bit later and just do a few touch-ups. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the neck now. So I'm going to go to the bottom right here, and I think I might need to just smooth this out a little bit. I'm going to go to the draw brush, and I'm gonna make my brush really big. And I'm just gonna start by going around in a big circle, really just popping that out, bringing that out and just thickening it up. All right, and then once we bring that up far enough, we can just use the grab brush and pull it out even more. But I just want to thicken that up and pull it out. It's pretty thin right now, but we will thicken that up later. So I just want to go around in circles. All right, so let's take a look. The shape is terrible, but we will fix that. So now that that's been pulled out a lot, I'm going to go to the grab brush and I can just start to shape this. So I'm going to pull it way down and just kind of pull it out because we're going to also start to make the shoulders a bit. Pull that down, pull that out. All right, really pull that out, and I really need to bring the neck forward as well. So just kind of pulling that out there. All right, pulling that out there for the shoulders. All right, that's pretty good. So let's go to the clay strips. And now we can just start to add a lot more clay onto the neck and really just define that shape. So I need to like fill in this big gap right here, really fill that in so that the chin and the jaw kind of match up, kind of connecting that. And more clay here on the side. Now this ridge, this is like a little bit too strong, so I'm just gonna hold in the control key, push that in a little bit, and then just add more clay in there to fill that up. And then I'm gonna really heavily use the smooth brush because I just really want to smooth this all out. I really need to fill in this gap right here because that ridge isn't really there. So I'm just filling that all in with clay. I still want to be able to see the jawline though. So I'm not going to go overboard with it, but I'm just going to fill that in where that jaw is. And then just smoothing that all out. Smoothing, smoothing, smoothing. All right, take a look at this. I think I'm going to go to the grab brush and just push out the neck because the neck is still pretty thin. So I'm just going to pop it out. I want to make it a lot more round too, because right now it's a little bit weird, a little bit lumpy. All right, let's go to the clay strips again. Add in more form there. Pulling out the back as well because I want there to be a nice back. So I'm going to press 3 for the side view and just shape this from the side, thickening up that neck. If I press 1 for the front view, I can also see it from the front. I want him to have pretty big shoulders so he looks buff and strong like a superhero. I think I'm going to make kind of like a V shape. That seems like what people usually do for like busts. Alright, now on the bottom here, I just want to add in more clay here. You're not really going to see this, but I just want to thicken it up. So I'm just going to go along here, adding more clay. Alright, and then just smoothing that out. Alright, and then I'm adding a little bit of a bump right here to kind of be like a muscle to make his neck and shoulder look really strong. And I'm also going to go along here and just kind of pop this out to make his shoulder nice and big. Because if he has big shoulders, he'll look nice and strong. I'm going to add in 2 important landmarks on the neck. So the first one is the Adam's apple. So I'm just going to go along here, just kind of pop that out, make a little bump right there, and then smooth it out. And then also I want to add the muscle that goes right here from the bottom of the ear, and we actually do need to add in the ear still, but where the bottom of the ear is, kind of at the top of the jaw, and the muscle goes all the way down. I'm just going to draw where it is, and it goes all the way down here, and then they both kind of meet here in the center. So I'm going to add that in. So using the clay strips, I'm going to go back and forth, adding in that muscle there. All right, going all the way down, and then smoothing that out. All right, pretty good. And then I think it would be a good time to add the ear, so let's go ahead and do that. Now he is going to be wearing this like superhero mask thing around his face, so I'm not going to be sculpting all of the ear, I'm just going to be sculpting kind of the lump, and then the mask will be going around the ear. So if I go to side view, I can just take a look at this. So the ear, if I go to the clay strips brush, the top of the ear is going to be about kind of where the top of the eye is, and then it'll curve around, and it's going to be right above where the jaw is, and it's going to go down, and then it's going to meet at the starting of the jaw. All right, just kind of popping that out and then filling this in, going along there, and then just holding down the shift key and smoothing this out because this is being covered up by the cloth, like the mask that he has over his head, just like that. Makes it a lot easier. We don't have to sculpt all the details of the ear. Really just popping that out because the ears do come out a little bit more, but if the mask was going over his face, it'd kind of be pushing the ears in. So the ears kind of want to go out, but then the mask is kind of pushing it back. So I'm just going to push that out a little bit more. And then if we go to side view, you can see how small that actually is. So I want to just continue to push that out because on front view, that's very, very small. So I'm just going to keep on adding more clay, popping out those ears more. All right, so I've just been going along here, adding that in, just really popping that out. Now if you go to the side, you can see that's definitely coming out more. And then I'm just smoothing that out. I think I'm going to go to the grab brush though and just kind of tap this and push it down a little bit because I think the ear is just slightly too high. You could even go to the side view if you wanted to and just kind of tap this and make it pop out a little bit more. All right, so it's looking pretty good. We're getting close to being done with sculpting. I do just want to fix up the neck a little bit, just do a few more things to the neck, but this is looking pretty good, and I think we're almost done with the sculpting. But then of course we are going to have to duplicate the face and just do a little bit of sculpting for the mask, but that's pretty easy, it won't take very long. Alright, so just a few more things I'm going to do. I want to make him look a little bit buffer, so I'm just going to pop out the shoulders a little bit, just kind of play around with the forms, just kind of looking at my references and trying to get it to look as best as possible. I'm going to go to the clay strips and just add a little bit more clay in some of these areas. And then something to note here on the back of the head, I want to add just a little bit of a form right here. So just going down and then coming up, and then right here in the center, just holding down the control key and going in a little bit, and then just smoothing that out. It is subtle, but just adding in a little bit of muscle there. Alright, press Ctrl S again, and I'm going to call this good for the sculpting. So I'm going to go back to the layout now, and I'm going to, with this object selected, I'm going to press Shift D, and then just press Escape so it goes back to the default position. So now we have two of them. Now this one, I want this one to be a little bit thicker and kind of come out a little bit because this is going to be the mask. So what I'm going to do this is click on Add Modifier, and then I can add the Displace modifier. Now when you do this, you can see it kind of just adds thickness to the entire thing. That looks terrible though because it's way too strong. So I'm going to turn the strength down. And what I want to do, you can see when the strength is at 0, it's kind of overlapping. If I change the strength to like a 0.1, you can see that now it's just coming out. This is too much though, so I'm going to change it to 0.05. And I think I'm going to go with a 0.015. So if I press H to hide this, and then Alt H, you can see that it's just kind of bumping everything out a little bit, and that's great for our mask. We just need to have it coming out a little bit. So make sure you have that object selected. And then before we jump over to the sculpting, I just need to press Ctrl A to apply that modifier. So now what I want to do is I just want to carve in wherever we don't want to see the mask. So I'm going to press F, make my brush bigger, and go to the clay strips. And you can really make the mask design however you want, but how I'm going to do it is just hold down the control key and start to go in, and you can see that we're basically just making that mask because wherever we go in, it's carving away the mask, and then you can see the character's face. So I'm going to start here at the nose and just go in here and just go along there. Okay, and then, you know, his nose and his mouth, I'm not going to have anything over that. And of course his eyes too. So I'm just going to go along there, pushing that in. Okay, of course you can make your mask design however you like. I'm going to just go along here, and I'm also going to show the chin. If you wanted to, you could have the mask going over the chin, but I'm just going to have it come down and over like that. Okay, so you can see a bit of his chin, and then right here, this is all that mask object. So I just need to go back in. And then this problem might be happening for you because we have the front faces only turned on, which I just turned it off just to make sure. You can see that something is happening right here. If I try to sculpt in right here, you can see it's not really going in. So if I just turn the front faces only off, then I can sculpt in because I just want to push all this stuff back. So I'm just going to go in there, push that back, and push that back as well, because this whole area, we don't want to see the mask. And then on the edges, you can see that this topology is pretty rough, but we will go back and sculpt that. All right, so then let's do the eye holes. So I'm just gonna hold down the control key, go in. You could do whatever shape you want or whatever. Just make 2 holes in the mask for the eyes. And then you could also go to the grab brush if you want to, and just play around with the shape of that. If you need to just play around with the shape, kind of pull this out, maybe add a little bit more room here. Just play around with the shape of it, and then we'll go ahead and smooth out those edges in a moment. I just want to play around with the shape, kind of finalize that. All right, and that's going to be good for my mask. So now let's go to the clay strips, and I'm going to make my brush pretty small, and we're going to zoom in here. And I need to turn back on the Dyn Topo. So right up here, just turn on the Dyn Topo. And I'm going to go along here and add more clay there, and then just smooth that out. And then I'm also going to hold down the control key, go in there. We're just kind of fixing this up, so I'm just adding in some clay there and then smoothing it out. And then I'm also going to go to the crease brush and hold down the control key and just pop that out. The sides of the mask there, that'll really just make that pop using the crease brush. And then I'm just holding down the shift key and lightly smoothing that out, and then using the crease brush again, holding down the control key, to make the crease brush just pop that out. So you can see that ridge there, that looks really good. So I just need to do that for the entire thing. So I'm just going to go along here holding down the Control key to sharpen that up, and then using the Shift key to smooth that out. Holding down the Control key, sharpening that up, Shift key, smooth that out. I'm just going to go along here, do that for the entire thing until those edges are nice and sharp. And then if you need to, you can go back to the grab brush and just tap some of these areas if you need to make them a little bit thicker. Alright, so that's going to be good for those eyes. So I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom there and around his face. And I'm going to do the same thing, so holding down the Control key, just popping that out. What I think I might do is just go around the entire thing, holding down the Control key so that it comes out, and then afterwards go back and smooth that all out. This is a bit rough, so I'm going to smooth it out so I can kind of see what I'm doing here. That is a little thick, so I might need to pull that back in with the grab brush. And it's really nice that the symmetry is on because it does the other side for us. So now I'm just going to go along here, holding down the Shift key, smoothing that out. I don't want to get rid of the ridge, but I'm just kind of smoothing out lightly. Alright, and then I'm going to go to the grab brush and just kind of push this in because it is a little bit thick. Alright, and then if you need to, if it got smoothed out in any areas a little too much, you can go back to that crease brush, hold down the Control key, and just crease that now that that's all smoothed out. Alright, that is looking really good. I'm just going to go to the grab brush and any little areas that are a bit wobbly. Alright, let's take a look at this. That is really good. So let's go back to the layout now. Alright, and here's our character. So I'm just going to select everything and then shade it smooth so that those objects are shaded smooth. So now what I want to do is I just want to do some basic materials. So to do that, let's go over to the shading tab. I'm just going to zoom in here and then I'm just going to select the mask object and then we're just going to click on new and I'm just going to call this mask. Oh, caps lock was on. And I'm just going to make it a very, very bright red color, but then I'll just make it a little bit dark. On the roughness here, I want to turn this roughness down a little bit so it's just a little bit more shiny. Now we could see this in the material preview, but I actually want to go into rendered mode. But if I go into rendered mode, it's all gray because we haven't added any lighting. So let's go ahead and add an Hdri and then we'll continue with the materials. So I'm going to click on the world right over here and then I'm going to click on the little color, the yellow dot. And then I can click on environment texture. And then I'm going to open up the Hdri that I talked about at the beginning of the tutorial. And then here is the Hdri that I'm going to be using to light our scene. So again, link is in the description if you'd like to download the same Hdri that I'm going to be using. I'm just going to open this up and then I can just go into rendered mode and now that is a lot better. We can actually see what the character looks like. Now I don't really like that it's really thin. So what I'm going to do is actually click, drag up, and then let go to close that. And then right here with the crosshair, I'm going to click and drag over, and then click right up here, and I'm just going to change this to the 3D viewport, and that way we can see our character a lot bigger. So I'm going to select the face, make sure that's selected. We're going to click on new. I'm just going to call it skin, and then I'm going to take the base color, just for the time being. We are going to be doing texture painting, but for the time being, I'm just going to make it kind of a tan color. Just make it whatever color you want. Alright, that's pretty good. And then let's click on the eyes. I'm actually going to go back into the material preview to see the eyes. I'm going to click on new and we're going to call this eyes white. And then the base color here, I want to turn this all the way up so that it's very, very white. And then the roughness, I'm going to turn this to 0. And why I'm turning this to 0 is so that the eye is nice and shiny because eyes are a little bit wet. Now I want to make the pupil in the eye, so I'm going to tab into edit mode. And you can see we have the mirror modifier on, so we need to go over to this one. And I'm going to press 3 and that will go to the face select. If you scroll over here, you can also just click on this right up here and that'll go to the face select. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select this and then just press B for the box select and just select this. So now we have the entire pupil. Now what I'm going to do, if I click right over here to the materials, I'm going to click on the plus here to add a new material into this object. So I'm going to click on the plus here, click on new. I'm going to call this eyes black. And then the base color, I'm going to turn that all the way down. And then the roughness, I'll turn to 0. Then make sure this is selected and I'm going to click on assign. And now you can see that we have some black pupils for our character. So he's really starting to look alive now. He's really starting to look like a character. Later on in the video, I am going to be texture painting the eye because I want to give a little bit of color in the eye and give it a little bit of a texture. So we will be texture painting this part of the eye, but I don't want to texture paint this part of the eye because this is like the black part in the center. So what I'm going to do is click on the plus here, click on new, and then I'm going to call this eyes color. And then what I'm actually going to do is alt and select this loop and then assign it. So this is the color that we're going to be texture painting. Then on the base color, I'm going to turn this to 0. And then the roughness, I'm also going to turn that all the way down. So now we just have the eyes black, and those are just going to stay black, and then the eyes color, that's what we're actually going to texture paint later on. Alright, so there is our basic materials. Now before we do the texture painting, I thought it would be cool to add the logo on the superhero, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click back right over here on the layout, and then I'll just go into the material preview just so that we can see the preview. So what I want to do is I want to use a Blender add-on to import the image of that logo. So I'm just going to go right here to edit, and then I'm going to click on preferences. And then over here on the add-ons, just go to the search and just start to type in images, and we're going to turn on this images as planes, okay? So just turn that on, then we can close the user preferences. So now that that add-on is turned on, I'm going to press Shift-C to make sure the 3D cursor's in the center, and then I'm going to press Shift-A and go down to image, and I'm going to click on images as planes. And then here is the star logo that I'm going to be using for the superhero's logo. Again, you can totally use a different image if you want to, but links in the description if you'd like to download this same one. So I'm just going to select this and then just make sure it's set to principled right here on the material settings. And then I'm going to click import images as planes. So it's imported it right in the center of the scene. So if we press G and then click with our middle mouse wheel and just bring this over, here is the star image. So now I want to rotate this over, so I'll press R to rotate, X on the X-axis, and type in 9, 0, and enter. All right, let's press 3 on the numpad for side view, and I'm just going to rotate this and bring it over and scale it down a little bit until it's right on the superhero's forehead. So basically what we want to do is we want to get this as close to the superhero's mask as we can, and then we're going to use some modifiers to do the rest of the work. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut. Now I want to add more loop cuts, so I'm going to scroll out with my scroll wheel to make 3 loop cuts. Then I can just left click and then right click to place those loop cuts. And then I want to do the same thing back and forth, so I'm going to press Ctrl R, scroll to make 3 loop cuts, and then left click and then right click. So now what we can do is we can press 3 for side view, press Z to go into wireframe, and I'm going to press B and just box select these top ones and then rotate it over, G to grab, A to deselect those, and then I want to do the same thing for the bottom one, so B for the box select, R to rotate, G to grab, and we're just going to stick that very close to the superhero's head, so you can see that's much closer now. It's curving around the superhero's head. And then also let's do that for the side as well. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, A to deselect everything. I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and select this loop, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select this loop. Then I can go to top view and press G to grab, click with my middle mouse wheel, just bring it in, and then Alt select this loop, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select this loop. And again, G to grab, click with my middle mouse and just push that over. So now it's curving around the superhero, and it looks like we need to maybe just bring the whole thing up a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's also shade this object smooth. So now we can use some modifiers to have Blender do the rest of the work for us. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifiers, and I'm going to click on add modifier, and I want to add first the subdivision surface. And why I'm doing this is because I want to add a lot more topology so that it can smoothly be placed on the mask. So right here, the levels in viewport, I want to turn this up very high to like a 5 on both of them. If that's a little bit too high quality, it might be a little bit laggy. You could turn it down to a 4 or something if you needed to. Now you can also see that it's making the edges kind of round. So I'm going to change it to simple, and then that'll fix that. Now what I can do is click on add modifier, and we are going to add the shrink wrap modifier. So we're just going to shrink wrap the star onto the superhero. So the target right here, if you click on the little eyedropper and then click on this, you can see that it's going to push the star onto the superhero's head. And then also if you press G to grab, it's going to move it around on the superhero. So what we need to do to fix this is we need to change this offset value right here. So what I found that works pretty good is if I change this to 0.0005. So 0.3 zeros and then a 5. I find that that works pretty well. That way it's just barely above the mask, but it's so small that you're not even going to notice it. Now, if you were wondering why we pushed this as close as we could to the superhero, that's because if you move this farther away, you can see it starts to have this weird wobbly effect, but when it's very close, that wobbly effect goes away. So when you're moving this, if you want to scale it or rotate it or whatever, you can totally do that and change where it is. I think I want to move it higher up on the superhero. I think I might want the star to be a little bit smaller actually. So I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. But what I want to do when I'm moving this is make sure this stays very close, because you can see if it moves kind of far away, it starts to get wobbly. You can even start to see it just that far away. It starts to have this weird wobbly effect. So just make sure it's as close to the superhero as you can, and that'll fix any issues. All right, now this star is black right now, but I actually want to make it a yellow color because I think that looks pretty cool for the superhero. So to change that, I'm going to click over here on the shading tab with the star selected. And you can see here's the image texture. Now, because it has an alpha channel, there's the alpha plugging into the alpha right here. And that way the star is going to be transparent in these areas over here. So what I can do is I can just unplug the base color, and you can see that now the star turns white because it's using the alpha, but then it's just using this base color. So we can just change the base color to whatever you want. So you can make your superhero have whatever star color logo you want. I want to have it a very bright yellow, so I'm going to make this fully white and then change it to yellow, but I don't want it to be more on the greenish yellow. I want it to be more on the orangish yellow. I just find that looks a little bit better, so I'll just make it yellow with a slight orange, and you can see that looks really cool. All right, so let's go back to the layout. And now we are ready to set up the model for the texture painting. So before we set up the texture painting, we need to decimate our sculpt because it's very high resolution. So I'm just going to select the face, and then I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to click on the Decimate modifier. Now, the ratio here, if you turn this down, it's going to take away more and more of the mesh, but it's going to do the best job it can at keeping the shape of the model. So I'm going to change this to something around a 0.3. And once it calculates, it'll actually take away more and more of the geometry and take away the vertices, but it will figure out ways to keep the shape of the sculpt. So now I can just click on this and then click on apply. And now that we've applied that, the sculpt has way less topology, but it pretty much looks exactly the same. Now there is another way to get rid of more topology. Because we have this mask here on top of the character's face, there's all this extra topology in the face, and we're not even going to see it. All we're going to see is like where the eyes are and where the mouth is. So what we can do is we can press 3 for side view and then just select the face, tab into edit mode and press Z for wireframe. I can press A to deselect everything, and then I can press C, and that's going to bring up this circle select. Now I can scroll my mouse wheel to change the size of it, and then I can just click and drag, and I'm just going to select everything that we're not going to see. So all of the character's head that we're not going to see, all of that, that's good. I can press X and delete vertices. So now if I drag this out, you can see it's just the character's head that we're going to see, but that's totally fine, and it'll get rid of a lot of the geometry. So now what we can do is we can click on Add Modifier again, and I'm going to click on another Decimate modifier because I want to decimate it even more. The ratio here, I think I might change this to like a 0.6. Just see how that's looking. If it's starting to look kind of glitchy, then definitely turn it up, but that looks pretty good. So I'm going to press Ctrl A to apply that, tab into edit mode, and that looks really good. So it is still kind of high topology, but I'm going to show you a quick and dirty way to UV unwrap this, and it actually works quite good, and it's a lot quicker than manually retopologizing or doing a remesh or anything like that. So that looks really good. Now I want to do the same thing. I just want to remesh the superhero's mask because it is kind of heavy topology. You can see how much topology there is there. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier and add a Decimate. So the ratio, I'm going to change this to probably something around a 0.4 and then wait for that to calculate. And then once it's done, you can press Ctrl A. You can also click right there and then click on Apply. All right, and with that applied now, you can see that I can tab into edit mode, and you can see that there's a lot less topology, but the mesh pretty much looks exactly the same, and the same for this object as well. Alright, so just select your face object and then press Ctrl S to save your project again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the UV editing tab so that we can UV unwrap this face. So I'm just going to zoom in here and press A to select everything. And then I'm going to press U, and that's going to bring up the UV mapping settings. And then I'm going to click on Smart UV Project. Now, I just wanted to note here that this really isn't the proper way to do it. This is just like a quick and dirty way to texture paint your sculpts. If you want to have really nice topology, then the best thing to do is to manually retopologize your sculpt, and then you can add seams and properly UV unwrap it. But because all we're doing is texture painting this, I just want a very quick and easy way to UV unwrap this. So I'm going to show you what I do when all I want to do is texture paint my sculpts. So Smart UV Project. The island margin right here, I'm going to change this to a 0.01, and that way there's just going to be a little bit of space between the islands. So now I'm going to click on OK, and you can see this is what it's done. Now the problem with just going ahead and texture painting this is that there's probably going to be some overlap because the Smart UV Project doesn't do the best job. Sometimes there's some overlap. So what we need to do is find those overlapping areas and move them out of the way so that then when we texture paint, there's not going to be any little glitchy areas. So what I'm going to do is make sure everything is deselected in this UV layout, and then I'll click on Select, and I'm going to click on Select Overlap. And you can see there's 5 different areas that are overlapping. So we just need to go through and fix each individual one. Luckily, a lot of these are pretty easy to do. And because we decimated our sculpt before we did this, this is going to make it a lot easier to do because there's not as much topology. So we're just going to go in here and fix all of them. So I'm going to click on this one, press G to grab, move that over, and that should be good. So again, A to deselect everything, click on Select, and then Select Overlap, and we'll just go to the next one. Let's see what's going on here. I just need to move this over. Okay, that looks good. Let's click on Select, Select Overlap. Let's see, there's one over here. This one is pretty easy, so I'm going to click on this, press G to grab, move this over. All right, and we will be doing a few harder ones, but I'll show you how to do these. So again, Select, Select Overlap. Okay, that's not too hard. We just need to move that over. All right, and then Select, Select Overlap. And there's this big one right here. All right, and I'm glad this happened because I want to show you how to fix something like this. So you can see, I think this is actually like a part on the nose. It's overlapping, and so if we tried to texture paint this, when we texture painted that area, another part of the sculpt would start to be painted because they're overlapping on the mapping. So I'm going to show you how to fix this. It's actually pretty easy. What I'm going to do is select this one here, and then what I'm going to do is press Control plus. And what Control plus is going to do is going to select all the vertices that are connecting those vertices. So I'm just going to continue to hit Control plus, and you can also just click on Select, and then right here, select more. So Control Numpad plus. So I'm just going to keep doing that, Control plus, until all of these are selected. Okay, that many, that's good, and I think I might just select these two and this one. So because this is overlapping, we need to move it out of the way, but if we try to just like rotate this, you can see that there's some stretching here. So the easiest way to fix this is to press V, and what V is going to do is going to rip those edges and make this its own island. So now I can just move it to somewhere out of the way, and that's it. So it's pretty easy to do. Let's deselect everything, and then just click on Select and Select Overlap. And you can see nothing is selected. So now we shouldn't have any problems when we're texture painting. All right, so let's just tab back into object mode, and then we'll go back over here to the layout. So there's just one more thing that we need to do before we actually start with the texture painting. We need to add an image to texture paint on. So to do that, I'm actually going to go over to the shading tab and just make sure you have your face selected. What I'm going to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for an image texture, and we're just going to drop it in, and then I'll plug the color up to the base color right here. Now we need to actually make an image because we don't have one yet, so I'm going to click on New right here, and I'm going to call this Skin Color. And then the width and height here, on default, this is a 1K texture. This is going to be a little bit low quality, so I want to paint with a 4K texture. So to paint with a 4K texture, I'm going to click, drag down, and then let go, and that'll allow us to edit both the values at the same time. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here, and then I'm going to click on the star. So I have a star on my numpad. I can also press Shift 8, and that'll add a star. So once I've added the star, I'm going to click 4. So what this is telling Blender to do is it's saying this number, we're going to times it by 4. And if I press enter, now you can see the number is 4096, and that is the texture resolution for a 4K texture. That's really great. I'm going to use a 4K texture. Now this color here, this is going to be the base color for the texture. So I'm going to set it to something like this, kind of like a tan color. You can change it to whatever you want. And that's good. I like that color. So now I'm going to click on OK. And because we plugged that in, you can see that now it's adding that skin color to the face. So now we're ready to do the texture painting. So make sure that's selected. I'm just going to go right over here to the texture painting. And you can see that if I start to draw, you can see that it's adding color onto the face. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. Alright, so I've hopped over to my drawing tablet. I just have my drawing tablet in front of me, and we can get started with the texture painting. Now, one thing I wanted to note, if you've never done texture painting in Blender before, then I definitely recommend watching my texture painting in Blender for beginners tutorial. I'll leave a link in the description. But if you've never done texture painting before, I will be going very slowly and showing you the entire process. So I want to move this out of the way so that I have more room. So I'm just going to click and drag and kind of make this really small so that we can see our character a little bit better. Now I want to select this skin texture. So I'm going to hold down the S key and then just hover my mouse over the skin, and you can see that it selects that color. So I'm just going to start by texture painting the lips here. So I want it to be similar to this color, but I want it to be a bit more red. And then also the face is symmetrical. So right over here, I'm just going to make sure that the symmetry is turned on, and that way we don't have to paint both sides of the face. We can just paint half of it. So I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger, and I'm just going to start by painting in those lips there. It's pretty easy to do. I'm just going around here painting those lips. You could also press Z and move into this view if you like that better, or the material preview, whichever one you prefer. And the strength is a little low on this brush, so I'm going to turn the strength up. So just going along here, filling in those lips with that color. Alright, and that's finished. Pretty easy. So now what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a texture onto the lips. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to make this a very dark color. And then I'm going to turn the strength way down. And then also the radius of the brush, I'll press F to change that and just make it really small. Now I can zoom in here, and I can just start to go around, and you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically just adding in this little texture here. It really helps to make the character look better. So I know it's subtle, but it will really help. So I'm just going to add this in. All right, maybe in a few areas, make it a little bit stronger. Go back along there so we can see it a little bit better. All right, and then in the very center here, if I just make my brush a little bit bigger, I want to go in here and just make that darker color in the center. Just that it almost adds like a tiny bit of a shadow, just makes the lips look like they're going in just a little bit more. So I'm just adding in a little bit of a darkness right in there. Pretty subtle. So now I want to give the cheeks just a little bit of red. So I'm going to press S, hover my mouse over this and grab that color, and then I'll just make it slightly more red. And then if I make my brush really big, I can just start to tap here along the cheeks, and I can just start to add in a very slight red color just to kind of make the cheeks just slightly red. Pretty subtle, but it will help. All right, and then also I think around the eyes, I just want to add a little bit of red. It is a little bit laggy because I am working with a pretty high quality texture. So when my brush is this big, it kind of lags up a little bit. All right, maybe turn the strength up a little bit because it's a little too subtle. That's pretty good. And then maybe just a little bit of red on the nose, just a slight bit of red, just to make it seem like more natural skin. Alright, that's pretty good. Now I also want to turn this to pure black, and then make my brush smaller and turn the strength way down. What I want to do in here is I just want to make kind of around the nostrils, just make that a little bit darker, and it'll almost just make like a shadow in the texture, and I think it will just help a little bit. Totally optional, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but you can see it's just kind of making a shadow there, and I think it just helps a little bit. And then also, if you want to turn the strength even more down, so it's very, very subtle, if you want to make like a little scruff or make it look like he just has a little bit of a scruff, you could just go along here and just add a little bit of gray. It does have to be very subtle, so I have the strength way down, but I'm just going to go along here. If I go into this view, I can probably see it a little bit better, but I'm just adding in a little scruff there. Also, I think I'll do it right here as well, so just zooming in. And it is subtle, but it will help. It'll just make him look like he has a little bit of a scruff. Maybe turn this up to a bit more of a gray color and turn the strength up just a little bit. And then go along there and add that. There we go. You can start to notice it now. All right, there we go. Alright, so that is going to be it for the texture painting of the skin. It's pretty easy to do. So if you just drag this back out here, there's a really important thing that we need to do. We need to save this image to somewhere on our computer, because if we don't, then if we close Blender, Blender's not going to remember this image, and so we'll have to re-texture paint it. So very important. So click right up here on Image, and then just click on Save As. And I'm just going to save this as skintexture.png and just save that on your computer with your other files. Alright, so let's go back into the layout. Alright, so now we're going to do the texture painting for the eye. So I'm just going to select the eyes, and I'm just going to go over to the shading tab right here. And I'll just zoom into the eyes. I'm actually going to press 1 for front view and just zoom in. I'm going to zoom into this eye because if I tab into edit mode, you can see this is the eye and then this other one is being mirrored. So I'm just going to zoom way into that. And then the eye's black, that's going to be the very center of the eye. I want to texture paint the eye's color. So I'm just going to select that. So click on the materials and then click on the eye's color. So before we start texture painting, there's 2 things that we need to do. We need to UV unwrap the sculpt, and then we also need to add a texture to texture paint on. So let's press Shift A. I'm going to search for an image texture. We're just going to add an image texture right here. And then this color right here, I'm going to plug it up to the base color. And then again, let's click on New. Now, right now, this is a 4K texture, and that's pretty high quality for a texture this small. We don't need it to be this high quality, so I'm just going to click, drag down, and then let go. And then I'm going to change it to 1024 so that it's a 1K texture. And then the name here, I can just call it Eyes. All right, there we go, Eyes. And then the color here, I want to turn this all the way to black. All right, and then just leave these settings at the default, and then I'll just click on OK. Alright, so now that we've done that, we need to UV unwrap our eye. So we're just going to be texture painting this outer one right here. So I'm going to press 3 or just click right here to go to the face select, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select this loop of faces. And then zoom right in, and I'm going to press U, and then I'm going to, instead of doing the Smart UV Project, I'm going to go right down here and I'm going to click Project from View. So it's going to UV unwrap it from our view, so it's just going to be flat. So now if we go to the UV editing, you can see that it's just flat, and that is exactly what we want. And you can see here is our eye texture. Now, right now, this is a little bit too small, so we're wasting a lot of space here in our image. So I'm going to press S to scale the UV mapping up, and then just press G to grab, and we're just going to move it because we really want to be able to optimize that texture. So just make it as big as you can, and that is great. All right, so we are ready to do the texture painting now. So I'm just going to click right over here on the texture painting. Just press 1 for front view. We're just going to zoom in and we can get started. So the strength here, I'm going to turn this all the way up to 1. Go to the front here. And I'm actually going to go into the material preview because I think that looks a little bit better. Now you could also texture paint over here if you wanted to. I think I might do that a little bit because that's pretty easy and it kind of makes it a little bit easier to see our texture. So I'm going to press F and make my brush bigger. And then right here on the color, I want to change this to a very nice bright blue color. So just something like that. All right. And then we're just going to start to go along here. And you can see because this pupil in here, because that's a separate material, we're not able to texture paint on it, so it'll stay nice and black. Now the strength here, I think I'll turn this down a little bit because it's a little bit too strong. And you can see here, if you want to texture paint over here, if that's a little bit easier for you, you can totally do that. So just go along there. We're just going to make a nice circle there. Just kind of brighten it up. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now I'm also going to change this to a very white color. And then I'm just going to go along the top here, and I'm just going to make it even lighter. So just adding that very white color to that, almost like it's reflecting this very bright color right there. All right. And then I'm going to change this back to pure black, and I'm just going to go along the edges and make sure that the edges are very, very dark. All right, that's really starting to give life to the character. All right, so that's really good, but I do want to add in some little lines coming off of the eye. So I'm going to make sure this is set all the way to black, and then the radius, I'm just going to make this really small. So I'm just going to press F to make my brush really small, and then the strength, I'll turn this really far down. Now what I can do is I can just start to go along here, and you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically just adding in a texture right here. So we're just adding these little streaks here from the center, and they're just coming out. So this is really cool. It's really going to make the character more interesting and really pop out those eyes, really bring those eyes out. Okay, just going along here, and again, you can texture paint on this if you'd rather. All right, so that is it. That is going to be the texture painting for the eyes. Pretty easy to do. Now, again, we need to save this image because if we don't save it, then Blender's not going to remember it. So we need to save it to our computer. So let's click right up here on Image, and then click on Save As. And then I'll just save this as eyes.png, and we'll just save that image. All right, let's go back to the layout and check that out. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to just pose this character a little bit because right now he's perfectly symmetrical and that's not very realistic. So I'm just going to rotate him a little bit, just kind of rotate his shoulders and change his expression a little bit so that he looks more interesting. So first I'm just going to select the mask object and then I'll go into the sculpting mode. And then I'm just going to press F, make my brush really big, and go to the grab brush. Now I'm going to turn off the X symmetry and I'm just actually just going to use my mouse for this. So I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger and I'm just going to use my mouse. It's pretty easy to do. So what I want to do is just kind of change him a little bit to give him more of an expression. So I'm just going to pull this up and over, just kind of making one of his shoulders coming up, and then this shoulder I'll just make it slightly coming down and then also slightly back, whereas this shoulder is going to be just slightly forward. And you may think that this is really subtle and isn't going to affect it much, but this will really help. It really just helps to make the character feel more alive. So just something like that already, he kind of looks like he's like looking over, just kind of pointing this in a separate direction. So he kind of looks like, it almost makes him look like he's looking slightly that way. Alright, so I'm going to hop back to the layout, and I also want to change the expression of his face a little bit, so I'm just going to select his face right here, and then I'll go back into the sculpting tab. And I'm just going to use the grab brush, again, turn off the symmetry because we don't want it to symmetrize it, and I'm just going to pull this up and just kind of give him a little bit more of a smile here, just kind of making it different on both sides. And then I'm also going to make this eye a little bit more open. So I'm just going to pull that up a little bit and a little bit more forward. And then this eyelid, I'm going to pull that down as well. And then this eyelid, I'm just going to pull that down so that it's a little bit more closed. All right, I'm going to go back to the layout and then just select his mask again because I want to play around with that a little bit more. So I'll just go back here, select the mask, and then go back into the sculpting tab. And I'm just going to pull that mask a little bit. I'm just going to make this mask opening up a little bit. You know, his eye is opening up, so it's kind of pushing the mask up, and then this eye is going down, so it's kind of, his mask is being pulled in a little bit. Also right here, I need to fix this a little bit, so I'll just pop that out a little bit. I want to change the eyebrows and kind of make one of the eyebrows kind of coming up and then the other eyebrows going back down. So I'll just go back here, select the mask, and then go back into the sculpting tab. And I'm going to go to the grab brush. And I'm just going to make this eyebrow coming up a little bit more. And don't worry if this goes through, the modifier will adjust to the sculpt. And then this one, I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. And if you wanted to just go back into sculpting mode and turn on the Dyn Topo and change this, you totally could. I'm just going to use the grab brush and kind of pull around these areas. It's pretty easy to do. All right, so back on the layout here, and you can really see what this is doing. So it's really making the character look more cool because his expression is different. You know, his mouth is a little bit up more. You can see this eyebrow is coming up a little bit, and his pose is changed a bit here on his shoulders. So it really makes the character look more interesting. Now I want to do the same thing for the eyes, so I want to make his eyes kind of rotating up and looking this way. So if you click on the eyes, you can see that there is the mirror modifier. So I'm just going to click right here and then apply the eyes. So now if I tab into edit mode, you can see the mirror modifier has been applied. Now to rotate the eyes, what I'm going to do is click right up here and change this to individual origins. That way, when we double tap R, make sure everything is selected, double tap R, you can see it's actually going to rotate the eyes around. So if I just press 1 for front view, I can double tap R and just kind of rotate this around. Just kind of make the character kind of looking up and to the side like that. Maybe not that quite far, but just double tap R. Gonna bring up the trackball rotation. All right, so now we can actually do the lighting and rendering and compositing and finish up this image. So I'm gonna add a camera, so I'll press Shift A, go right down here and then add a camera. Now I'm just gonna move where I want the camera to be, and then I'm gonna press Control Alt Numpad 0 so that the camera hops to where we are. I can now press R to rotate, Z on the Z axis, and just kind of rotate that. And also if I want to move the camera in and out, I can press G and double tap Z and just kind of move that. So just move the camera. You can also double tap R, trackball rotate the camera, just rotate it around so that you can see the entire character. Alright, that's good. So now let's add in some lights. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to go to Mesh and I'm going to add in a plane. Now I'm doing this in Cycles Render, so I'm going to be using plane lights. If you're doing this in Blender Eevee, then it's probably better to just go to Light and maybe just add an area light. Those work pretty well. But I'm going to be doing this in Cycles Render, so I like to use these emission lights. So I'll just press G to grab, S to scale, and then I want to rotate this. So I'm going to press R to rotate, X on the X-axis and type in 9, 0 and enter. And then if I press 7 for top view, I kind of want this to be a rim light. So I'm going to rotate this, scale it down, and just kind of bring it behind the character. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's press S to scale and Z on the Z axis and just scale this way up so we have a nice rim light here. Let's go back here and then we'll just hop into the rendered view. Now I'm going to click right over here on the materials and I'm going to click on new and I'm going to call this rim light. And then right here, the principled, I want to change this to an emission so that it's emitting light. Now the strength here, I'm going to turn this way up so that's a lot brighter. All right, that looks better. Maybe something around 20 or 30. And then the color here, I want to change this to a very slight blue. I think that just helps to make it look a bit better. Just a very subtle blue color. And then also I want to bring this over here because I think it looks a little bit better if it's a little bit more behind the character. But when we do that, you can see that you can actually see the rim light. So to hide the rim light, you can click right over here on the object properties, and then right down here, you can see that there is this ray visibility. If you click on the camera, turn that off, you can see that now the camera isn't able to actually see this object. So now we can just light this however we want. That looks really good. Now I want a rim light to be on the other side as well. So I'm going to press Shift D, bring this over, and then just press R to rotate, Z on the Z axis, and just point that at the character. Maybe bring that a little bit more on the side of the character. All right, so it's adding that nice rim light in there. It really makes the character stand out from the background, and it just allows you to see the shape of the character better. So that looks really good. All right, so now I want to add 2 lights in the front of the character. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a circle. And again, if you're using Blender Eevee, for this it's probably best to just maybe add like a point light. I'm going to tab into edit mode and then press F to fill a face, and then I'll tab back into object mode. So now I can scale this down, rotate it, and just bring it up here so it's kind of on the top of the character. All right, just like that. And then if I go over here to the materials, I can click on new, and I can just call this like main light. All right, and then right here, the surface, I want to again change this to an emission so that it's emitting light. And then I'll turn this way up, and you can really see that's really starting to make the character feel a lot better. If I just change this to a slight yellow color, that'll also help. I think a slight yellow color fits really nicely. And you can see with this light, because I added it in the front of the character, you can see that it's making these little highlights in the eyes, and that really helps to make the character feel more alive. Adding in those little highlights there on the eyes really helps. So I did that deliberately. I just put it right there so that it would reflect that in the eyes. All right, so just turn this up to something that you like. Now I also want to add another light down here. So I'm going to click on this, press Shift D, move it down, and then R to rotate. And I'm just going to set it kind of underneath here so it's pointed up at the character. Now I want it to be a different light. So right over here with the little like file icon, I'm going to click on this and that's going to duplicate the light. And then this one, I want this to be a very strong orange color. So when we go into rendered mode, you can see what it's doing. It's basically just making that little orange color right there on the bottom of the character. And I think it looks really nice. You can see there's without it and then there's with it. So it's really nice. I think it just makes the character look pretty cool. It might be a little too bright. So if you want to turn that down, just make that look a little bit better. All right, that is looking really great. Now I want to make the background transparent, and then in Blender's compositor, we can just add a color for the background. So to make the background transparent, I'm going to click right over here, actually click right up here, one over, just go to the render properties, and then right down here on film, I'm going to turn on transparent. So now there is a transparent background. Now there's just one more thing that I want to do to really make this character stand out and look nice. I want to actually make those blue eyes a little bit brighter. So I'm going to select the eyes and go over to the shading tab. Let me just go into rendered mode here so we can see what we're doing. So what I want to do here, if I just select the eyes, I need to select the other material. So I'm going to click right over here to the materials and then click on eyes color. What I want to do is I want to press Shift A and add an RGB curves and just drop the RGB curves right in here between the eyes and the principled. And then what I can do is I can just turn this up, and that's going to just make the eyes brighter and just make them pop out a little bit. I'm also going to click on the B, and that'll go to the blue. And then if I pop that out, you can see it's making the eyes more saturated and making it more vibrant and bright. So that looks really good. All right, that really helps. So I'm going to go back to the layout here. Just look at that. That looks really good. I'm pressing Control B in the camera and then dragging, and that's going to add a boundary so that it only renders what you can see in the camera. All right, so I'm going to set the render samples to 100, and I'm also rendering with my GPU. So before we render this out, just press Control S again, save your Blender file so that if it crashes, we won't lose anything. And then to render out the image, you can just press F12. All right, there we go. So there is our image. Let's just do a little bit of compositing, and then we'll save this image. So I'm just going to click right over here on the compositor. All right, and then just click on Use Nodes, and there should be a Render Layers and a Composite node. So I'm going to press Shift-A, and I'm first going to add a denoise node because I want to denoise the image, and I'll just drop the denoise node right in here. Now I have the Node Wrangler add-on turned on, so if I press Control Shift and click on a node, it's going to add this viewer node, and then just make sure this backdrop is turned on, and you should be able to see what's in the background. Now, if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on turned on, you can also just search for a viewer node and just add that in and plug it up. All right, that is looking really good, and the denoise node smooths out that image. Now I also want to add a color in the background, so I'm going to press Shift-A and add an alpha over, and we'll just drop the alpha over right here. And then this image, I actually want this to be plugged into the bottom one, and then on the top one, I can make it whatever color I want. So I just want to make it like maybe a dark blue color. I find that looks pretty good. Wait for that to load up. All right, that maybe is a little bit too bright, so I'll just turn that down a little bit. All right, that is pretty good. Now, if you wanted to, you could also press Shift-A and search for like an RGB curves to do a little bit of color correction. So you could like play around with this, like bring this up, bring this down, and that'll just pop out the colors a little bit and make it a little more contrasty. And also, if you wanted to add a little less blue or a little more blue, you could play around with that. So to save this image, I'm going to press F11, and that's going to go to the render result, and then just go over here and click on the viewer node so that you can see what the viewer node is seeing. So to save this image, just click right up here and click on Image, and then just click on Save As. And I'm just going to save this as Superhero with the rest of my files, and then we will save as image. So there we go. There is the superhero character sculpting tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to help support me and also get the project files for my tutorials, then you can do that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. The links are in the video description. But again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you in a future tutorial.